Hello, everyone. I wanted to supplement the video that I have up, one that I made about 10 years ago, actually, um, with something that I'm doing now because it's 10 years ago. I thought I'd put it up because I think that what I said there was correct, but that I was so focused on that aspect of it that I might have left out some of the other things about this essay by Milton Friedman that might be helpful for us as we move forward in the class. The point that I made I think is correct. That is that the most substantive thing, perhaps the only really rigorously substantive thing that Friedman says, is that the executive of a publicly held company is an agent and not a principal, meaning that the the executive is an employee and is then bound to not do what she or he may want to do, but to act in what they perceive to be the desires in pursuit of the goals of the owners of the company, who are the shareholders. And that things being what they are, they cannot then do anything but what maximizes profits for the company because that maximizes shareholder um, value, shareholder wealth. That is, if you're a shareholder in a company and you can be presumed to have bought the stock because you expect it or hope that it will go up in value. So if the uh, executive would do anything else but maximize that value, they would be going against the wishes of the owner of the company and therefore not doing their job as an agent. That I think is all correct. Um, but and I don't think I completely ignored the other aspects of the essay, but maybe I didn't sufficiently emphasize them. For Friedman, the business, it can be whatever the owners of the business want it to be, but presumably, the um, in reality, in the greatest number of cases, the business is a profit making enterprise. And when it does anything else, that is either a um, betrayal of its fundamental purpose or it is a kind of a sham. For instance, at one point, um, Friedman acknowledges that businesses sometimes do engage in things other than uh, uh, direct profit making, but that this is usually a kind of a game. As he says here on page 5, he says, of course, in practice, the doctrine of social responsibility is frequently a cloak for actions that are justified on other grounds rather than a reason for those actions. And he lists certain charitable things that a business may do and all sorts of other things. But those charitable things are only done in the self interest of the corporation. Um, that is, they're only done when they are done responsibly to enrich the corporation, which is, after all, what the executives of a corporation are tasked to do. And what seems to be the bigger picture here for Friedman, whether or not he has actually rigorously established it, is that this is okay. That is, the businesses are meant to make profits. That's what they're for, um, and that this is okay. There is no argument here that that's the best thing for society, although I would suppose that Friedman would agree that they have benefits for society, but there's no argument there. Businesses are what they are. They are things that individuals set up for their own enrichment, and that if there's anything to say for them in terms of their social function, it is that they at least do not coerce anybody into um, anything. As he says here, the last page, page 6, the political principle that underlies the market mechanism is unanimity. In an ideal free market resting on private property, no individual can coerce any other. All cooperation is voluntary. That is, it's all about um, making bargains. It's all about trade. And the thing about trade is, if you're offered a deal in a trade, um, some kind of economic exchange, the idea is that you are under no uh, compulsion to agree to the trade, to agree to the bargain, that it's all voluntary. If somebody offers you a commodity at a certain price, you're always free to turn it down. He contrasts this with what he describes in the next paragraph as the conformity, and that's government. For instance, something like taxation or the obeying of a law. The political principle that underlies the political mechanism is conformity, as opposed to the market mechanism. The individual must serve a more general social interest, whether that be determined by a church or a dictator or a majority. The individual may have a vote and say in what is to be done, but if he is overruled, he must conform. That is, the idea is that, let's say in paying your taxes, you may have all sorts of problems with not only how you're taxed, but what your tax dollars are actually going to. And although we're all free to dissent about these things, we're not free not to pay our taxes. We have to conform. Now, this, of course, involves us in all sorts of political, philosophical questions about politics. But I think that you can see the kind of contrast that he's making between unanimity or voluntary participation and conformity or compelled participation. And he believes that the realm of the market is a realm of freedom and non compulsion. He doesn't argue that corporations generally contribute to the public good. Maybe he takes that for granted. But so I think that what we have here, again, aside from the argument about that I laid out in the other essay about the constraints that any employee, especially an executive of a publicly held company, is under in terms of what they can do, besides pursue profits for the company. What we have here is, generally speaking, a notion of the business as essentially a profit-making enterprise. It can be other things if the owners of the business want it to be, but what it essentially is a mechanism for making profits.